share my experiences. I joined one of the finest chain of hotels in the country. I spent a total of 39 years in the hotel industry. I have retired from the hotel industry in the year 2019. Of this 39 years, I spent 23 years in the flagship hotel and about 16 years in the corporate office. So, as part of the hotel, I handle imports for about 10 to 12 years and the rest of the purchasing, which is done in a hotel industry. And as part of the corporate office, I was responsible for contracting of food and beverage, wines and spirits, capital goods, different areas of the contracting. So we used to do annual contracting, and a team. We were segregated into three teams. So one handled the food and beverage, one handled the capital goods, and one team handled the operating supplies. So that's the way we did our annual contracting. Having been a process driven person, I was happy that the management gave me an opportunity to, in fact, handle medical equipment for about 2 or 3 years. So there was a cancer hospital that had to be opened. So a team of us joined that group and we handled medical equipment. So the point I want to share here is if you follow processes, you can do your job in any sector, in the industry. You don't have to be, though I was a hotel background person, handling that medical equipment gave me a lot of experience, though it was only for 3 years. I want to share two interesting experiences. One was, being in the hotel industry, we tend to treat our guests like God. And there's anything that they want to be made available is made available to them. So there was a rock star that had come to the country, wanted an experience on having a ride on an elephant. And the responsibility for arranging that obviously came to the materials and the purchasing function. I won't go into the story of what we did to make that arrangement, but it eventually happened. And we also had to arrange for the stay of the mahot, of the elephant, and things like that. The point I'm trying to make here is there could be just about any job that comes your way. It may not necessarily be negotiations or your day to day work. And anything that you handle post that, gives you an experience. And another experience that I would like to share is, we try to break the monopoly of a supplier who was, let's say, a vegetable vendor for about 12 years. So, unfortunately, we hadn't built in contingency. So, on the very first day of the contract, the vendor failed, and literally our entire department was in the market because you can imagine the quantum of, you know, products that were required. So, that taught us that when you ever displace somebody, you have to have your contingencies in place. So, I thought I should share these two experiences.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Florence. So, like in continuation of that, like this is wow, like that you have worked for the same organization for like almost 4 decades, right? So, like, what was that particular reason, or maybe multiple reasons for you to like not look out of your organization? So, what is that made you happy here and like made you pursue with your current organization till the end? So, yeah.
Monica, I'd like to break it up into four sectors. Of course, the work culture. I
Sure.
belong to an organization where the work culture was really good. There was a feeling of inclusiveness. There was an opportunity to grow. And I would like to mention here that I actually joined the organization as a secretary and I retired as the assistant vice president of the corporate office. So the journey has been because the management placed trust in me. I took opportunities that came my way. I was glad to do what I did. There were colleagues who were very, very supportive. And, we all want this inclusiveness and we don't want to be treated separately just because we are women. And I think I must say this that I had colleagues or my seniors, the management of the company, that placed a lot of trust because there was a point in time when we contracted for, let's say, about 400 to 500 crores of rupees contracting that was, responsible for an individual. That doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from trust. So I think it was the trust of the management, the culture of the organization, the inclusiveness that I experienced, and I think that is what made me stay. And of course, I was very happy to be there. And another thing that I really enjoyed in the organization was mentoring. When I look back at my career, there are so many youngsters who are in different continents, not only here, all over the world. And when I'm in touch with them and realize where they have reached, being part of my group or my team, I am really, really happy.
Sure, great. Thanks, Florence. Yeah.
I mean, that's such an incredible journey, Florence. I mean, thank you so much for being such an inspiration to so many people. I know you threw some light on, how you've been a mentor. And I think that's what professionals like us seek, mentorship and guidance from people like you. It's just amazing. And I mean, I was just wondering, right? So, if you've grown in your career from a secretary to an assistant vice president, sometimes that's not just a one man show. I'm sure you have like a very solid support system around you. Would you like to mention something about that or, address it?
Yes, Simon, support is absolutely necessary. We are not super women. We are not superhuman beings, And while women are known to multitask, there is a limitation to how much you can do. I was very blessed with because in 6 years of marriage, in 6 years of joining the company, I was married with two kids. I had a very supportive spouse, and the role that he played was not only support, but it was also an encouragement, to excel in the field that I was. Children also played a role because a working mother is generally seen as somebody who's depriving the children of her valuable time that needs to be spent with them. But I'm happy to say when I look back that there was no feeling of guilt. A lot of times women feel guilty about leaving their young kids at home and going to work. And I think this is not, it should not be necessary. As long as you play your roles and have that work life balance and have the support system that you need, nothing is really impossible.
Thank you so much for sharing that thought of yours. Actually, I completely agree. So, I think Miss Indrani Noe also has the same parallels, right? Where if you do not have a supportive partner, it's very, very hard for women to grow. Because I think there are statistics which talks about how women after a certain age do not reach certain positions in a particular company unless you have supportive family. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience, Florence.
Most welcome, Shiva. So, Alpana, let's come back to you. You've also had your fair share of experiences. Modern supply chains are becoming more dynamic than ever before. There is much more awareness, acceptance, and the right ecosystem compared to the years before. What changes do you think are necessary to make supply chain more inclusive?
See, supply chain as a whole has undergone a transformation today. So earlier it was more about logistic, how we will probably take some stock from one place to another. And when we went out in the market and used to say we are supply chain professional, people used to associate us with somebody who's arranging for a transport or probably doing some shifting here and there or purchase, as Monica pointed out earlier. So now it's not about only those things. It's about digitalization and automation which has happened across the supply chain. There is a, like, last 2 3 years are a big example of this, that if you look at COVID, if you look at Ukraine war currently, where all the countries are facing the supply chain issues, and it has impressed upon us that there has to be a need of change, of flexibility, of transparency in the supply chain, and which is happening. That automation is happening, and the information is flowing right from the raw material provider to the end customer, and all the units or functions in an organization work as a unit to make that supply chain successful. So I believe that transformation is happening, and there is a big role the women can play into the structured, innovative, and planned supply chain, where we can build a ecosystem along with our male members, or supply chain in a culture of trust, to build it, make a supply chain possible, successful supply chain possible. I think that's it from my side, Florence.
Thanks, Alpana.
So, adding to this, because I do know Shimon is a big subject matter expert into this transformational technological advancement. So, let me ask her a question. So, these are digital supply chain are now a reality, and being working closely in this space. How do you see women leadership and participation of other women into this whole structure? And where do you see your own career headed towards this particular supply chain, infrastructure which is coming up?
Sure, Alpana. Thank you so much for that question. And thank you so much for such kind words. But I truly believe I'm a work in progress. I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
but actually, it's very interesting. I was recently reading this article in Forbes, right, where they were talking about how supply chain leaders are make such great CEOs. And I mean, that just struck a chord with me because we as supply chain leaders, like every single point that the three of y'all made, there has been some point in time where we're firefighting. And like, Monica was mentioning about how food directly goes with packaging and she's been interacting with suppliers. I think all of us have been, and then, we mentioned about dependency on one single supplier, right? And so we've already been equipped to firefight, right? So supply chain leaders are someone who kind of collaborate with every other branch, be it sales and operations, be it your warehouse operators, your IT team, to actually make a seamless or device and give your opinion to build your IT structure, or even marketing, right? Because marketing has to collaborate and go hand in hand with your sales and operations. So supply chain professionals are the ones who are the closest to actually knowing or having the efficiency to be great leaders. And also, it was said that supply chain officers control over 50% of the revenue. So they also have experience handling that revenue, like how Ms. Florence was mentioning about just having the ability, or where do you source things from, what are the materials. And I feel as women, we're already equipped to multitask. So we're in a way, or in a sense or not, we're very intuitive when it comes to making decisions, and a female perspective makes a lot of difference. And I think that's one additional reason more companies are moving towards gender neutrality within X number of years, because that absolutely makes sense. And imagine the power combination of also bringing your female perspective into to the table, as well as having a supply chain background. I think that's a powerful combination. So apart from that, when we speak about digital supply chain, or what is the advent of technology, how is it impacting supply chain? Alpana, I think you made some very valid points about automation. So over the past decade or so, the change, or the kind of innovation we've seen in the logistics sector, right, with the advent of technology, has been manifold. And that's also the kind of support we're receiving from various government entities, or investment partners. So I'd like to kind of touch upon on three different topics, right? So one is robotic process automation. I think there is kind of more openness or more adoption to it, where people have become aware that it's not really a threat to your job, right? It's seen more as a way to get your repetitive tasks done, so you are able to give your attention to more at places where it requires personal attention, right? When you have to develop a rapport with a particular supplier, for example, use your human, have that communication with them. Or for example, when you're moving from reactive to a proactive based decision making, right? So that's when you need to have a digital platform, and you need to have end to end visibility for that. Again, I think one of you mentioned about how having many suppliers on board, and the ability to switch between different suppliers in terms of adversity. I think that's where technology will actually make a lot of difference, by bringing all your entities together and giving you that visibility and interactivity, where you're able to make more proactive decisions instead of just waiting and just wait to actually solve a problem after it's occurred. And again, like blockchain as well, right? So blockchain is a place where it really helps in onboarding, and it actually fastens your supplier onboarding, because your payment process has been expedited, and now you have multiple people where you can actually choose from, and they have the visibility as well. And I think one other area that we kind of have to talk about is collaboration in supply chain. We kind of I feel it's under addressed sometimes, because when we look at supply chain in a disaggregate format, there is a lot of chaos, which kind of translates into bullwhip effect if you're not really able to transit the information accurately downstream. So your retailer predicts X amount of SKUs, but by the time that information goes down to your supplier, that has already led to so much wastage. Again, like this contributes to your circular economy, right? Because circular economy is again being very optimal with your usage, very optimal of having shared usage. So I think there is more awareness in that space where companies are more open to sharing their their contracts or their bidding process. So there is collaboration between companies so that we're able to share our resources. If it's going to the same end destination, then why not? It's a win-win situation. And just to speak a little bit about where I see my career headed in this domain. So I feel like this is something that I'll probably be doing for life. And currently, or if I look at the very near future, I absolutely love the company that I work for. So that really gives me the flexibility to kind of venture into different aspects of supply chain. So I think that's one advantage of being in consulting. So I currently work in a network design team, supply chain design team, where we try and help companies we try and tell them how many warehouses, how big must they be, and which customers to serve, and basically defining strategy. But I also do want to venture and look into perspectives of streamlining your forecasting and supply demand, so you're able to reduce your cost, you're able to you're able to prevent stockouts, and your supply chain operation, which is actually designing your warehouse. So I just want to continue learning and use this experience to help more clients solve their business problems. And as a closing point, I think one other thing that kind of takes my attention, or I do tend to look into, is food wastage, right? And that's, I think, something that the government of India is trying to incentivize so much, where they're trying to incentivize cold storages, because there's so much enormous wastage of food because we're not able to store it better. And being a supply chain professional, I do want to work and tackle on such kind of problems, and be contribute something to the society. Yeah.
Thank you, Shimon. So I do agree with you in terms of food wastage. At our end also, we do have Delhi to go cafes associated with our convenience stores. And this might be a very useful insight for us as well, because we are also doing a lot of, efforts to manage that. Not only that, but also recycle the waste that comes across at our fuel stations. So yeah, that is there. So, moving on, let me ask a question to Florence. How do you think the ecosystem can work towards to bring in more women as supply chain leaders? And what do you advise young women who aspire to excel in this particular supply chain career?
Sure. I think in the ecosystem, what would be required, Alpana, if women have to take more responsible roles, is they need to have the comfort that, say, especially the young ones, that their children are well taken care of. So what we really need is good daycare centers or maybe creches, which I am aware a lot of organizations have now started, and that's where the mother and child can be close to one another, and you need not worry about the the kid. So that is one aspect. The second aspect would be, and I see even the government has encouraged additional maternity leave, and in fact even paternity leave. So the mind is then free to concentrate on the actual job at hand, rather than being divided between managing your home and your workspace. And definitely in organizations have to look at inclusiveness and have a balance of women in the team, so because you contribute differently. And what I'd like to say here also is, post pandemic, this culture of flexi timings, hybrid work culture has also come about. And I would hope that organizations take this into consideration, because I am sure it will help the women workforce for certain.
Thank you, Florence. That too answers the question. So we do have some questions in the private chat here posted by Florence. So I think one of them is in terms of describing your leadership style and how you lead others. Is it different from your male counterparts? So I will like to say no here, that it is not different to my male counterparts. And the leadership style, very highly pointed out by Florence, is that there has to be an inclusive culture where people can express each other opinions. And inclusiveness may not be by way of only gender of a person. It may be in terms of somebody who is maybe extrovert, introvert. So there has to be a balance, and you should encourage others to speak out. You should encourage others to seek help, and you yourself seek help from others. So that is the kind of culture that I aspire to and do work as well. Of course, there is scope for improvements. So that is my style, my personal style, if you ask me. And the company I work in is definitely supportive of this culture of inclusiveness in terms of overall people that we have and working as a unit to aspire to succeed. Yeah, that's it from my side. So probably other questions are also there. So there's a question to Monica that what has been the most significant barrier in your career? So Monica, would you
Yeah,
like to
sure.
answer it? Yeah.
So I was going through it, right? So if you ask me frankly, there has been no, as such, like personal or professional barrier into my career. So as I like mentioned during my previous conversations also, so being a food technologist and then getting into like getting a chance to study packaging science, right, as my post graduation course. So yeah, like both things like goes hand in hand. And like from that point itself, like while I was pursuing my packaging career into IIP, so like at the same time itself I decided to go into this domain, right, which is supply chain. Because like while I was having knowledge about various kind of factors and parameters into this role, right, packaging. But yeah, then there used to be a lot of questions into my mind during that time itself, that how we can mitigate the food wastage issue, as Shimon already mentioned about. So yeah, there were a lot of things which I really wanted to work upon, and want to really work upon my work onto, like from my side, while entering into an industry. So that's how I realized that I really want to build my career into supply chain. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica.
Uh, Maybe I
Shimon,
can take the next question.
Shimon, just
So,
one question to you. Uh, you worked in the global market in the US. What are your observations between women working in the US and back home here?
So again, I think it was the inclusivity factor, Florence. I cannot really speak to, working in supply chain because I've only been working remotely off lately. It's been about 5 months since I came here. So I cannot really speak about, uh, how the industry treats you. But all I can kind of highlight about is the fact how people are more aware, like women are more aware there about the opportunities that they have, right? So as a result of which they are more open and the mindset is more different to even approach this industry. I think that was one of the key takeaway for me.
So I'd like to add here, Florence, that I have been working along with many colleagues across cultures in terms of doing some joint projects or contributing to some regional projects. And I found that everywhere the culture and the attitude of women is quite similar. There are quite a few inspirational women leaders and colleagues that I've worked with, and also men. In fact, my induction in supply chain was done by a male colleague only. And till date, I'm thankful to that. So yeah, so that is something which reiterates what Shimon was pointing out.
Well, it surely was an engaging session. Let's have one last question.
Sure. So Shimon, like just a question from my side. So like many companies, they ensure like that they have certain percentage of women to improve, right? In terms of diversity ratio. So like, do you think similar strategy can work in supply chain as well? Like what are your views on that?
Uh, I think thanks for the question, Monica. So yeah, there are a lot of multinational companies who have like a target set for certain, next number of years they want to be gender neutral, right? So this is like a very personal perspective of mine. So having that diversity in, it's almost industry agnostic, I feel, because having a women's perspective or a man's perspective in a room is very, very important because both of them bring a different perspective, which sometimes the other one cannot bring. But saying that, I also do not think that women have to be just given a particular opportunity just because you're a woman. If there is a male counterpart who is even more, well, who probably deserves the position more than you, but you are given getting it only because you're a woman is something that doesn't really sit with me very well, right? Because I think feminism is all about equality, being given you the right opportunity and not being discriminated against. And right now, companies are very incentivizing certain things, right? Where I was recently reading an article. So I feel one industry where probably we need more encouragement or more awareness is, in the lower end of the supply chain. Like for example, in garment industries and everything, where women get paid almost, there are more number of women, and there is a reason why they employ more women, because they can pay them at least 20% lesser than the market rate. So, in places like that and levels like that is where I think we need to kind of draw more attention to, and companies should kind of incentivize for equal wages. And actually, I was working with, particular, this was, I think, in a mentoring session where a particular company mentioned how they are incentivizing their clients who are working in like empowering women, right? Who are not very educated, but who are also, but they're trying to make them more independent. So I feel our job as, leaders or being someone who's educated, we need to spread the awareness and also educate people. And I'm always seeking mentorship, and I'm sure, and I wish I'd done it sooner, right? That's been one learning point for me. And I really, really encourage to anyone in the audience who's saying, explore, like, explore the different opportunities you have, reach out to people, try and understand, and try to discover what really matters to you, what really draws your interest towards, right? Because like all four of us have worked on different aspects of supply chain, but all of us kind of knew our parallels with each other, right? We can draw our parallels from each other's experience. So yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
Sure. Thanks, Simon. I truly agree to you what you said. Thanks.
Yeah, so there's
I have
a
a question
question
for
that,
you. Sorry,
yeah.
Alpana. Actually, it's a question for you. So, what does it really feel like to be like a women leader in supply chain, and what are your thoughts about women participations in the front line of supply chain? And just your thoughts on having more women drivers. It's one of the question from the audience.
See, it's an excellent question because I do have many women colleagues as part of our supply chain team, and I take a lot of lessons from each and every one of them. Like I pointed out, not only in India, but being part of a multinational, I've noticed this transformational change across the region and across global supply chain. That we have a lot of women now there, they have a lot of value to add. Having said that, I don't disregard our men colleagues there, but at the same time, I have seen the transformational change in the last 9 years that women have increased in number, and there's no such bias or taboo which stops us to perform well in the supply chain in terms of delivering value to our stakeholders and having a innovative kind of approach to the supply chain. So as I pointed out earlier, supply chain is no longer about logistics, and it is no longer about just one transport to another. It is a broader term which encompasses a lot of things, and of course adds value to the company as a whole, so impacting the bottom line of the company. So it's quite transformational, and I think there's a scope of more women to join in and have the leadership, especially in the mid-sized firms, to trickle this down that women are essential to supply chain performance and have us in place there. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Shiman.
Yeah, thanks for the answer, Alpana. Uh, I think there's a question for Monica. So, Monica, what is your perspective on, do you feel that it is true that women themselves are hesitant to enter the supply chain industry? And why do you think so?
See, if you ask me, Shimon, I do have a different perspective to that. Like from a stereotypical point of view, also, if you see, like planning is something we are good at, right? So, as many as women, they have like technical backgrounds and excellent problem solving skills. So, which is like a very important factor, right, in a supply chain domain. So, analytics, logistics, and network strategy, they are like these are a great areas for women to consider. So women are already are like great building relationships, also in building relationships. So I don't think so that there should be any more hesitation in entering in a supply chain industry, because as I mentioned that there is no like differentiation in terms of how a woman or a man is handling things into this particular domain, as Alpna also mentioned about. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Monica. Like all the key skills that you mentioned, like whether it's planning or whether it's problem solving, yeah, it's kind of intuitive for women. But I think the only line where we kind of fail to draw is how Alpana was mentioning. Supply chain is no more just truck drivers and logistics behind the scene. That's more to that. All the key skills that you mentioned. Thank you. Thanks for that answer.
There's one question that just about any one of us can answer. What is the one leadership lesson you've learned in your career?
So I think all of us can just answer in one word, that it perseverance in terms of trying to perform and add value to the organization that you work in. So probably Simone and Monica can add to it.
Yeah, I agree, Alpana. And probably one other thing that I'd like to add is lead by example. And that is something that I learned from one of my colleagues where I'm working right now. Instead of, just being a person who just delegates, try to get out there, try to help the person whom you're leading. Because the best way to probably lead is to lead by example.
Sure, yeah, I totally agree to both of you. I would say that like you should have a ability to connect and collaborate, right? Be it as we discussed, be it with your suppliers, be it with your colleagues, right? Be it any other for any matter, like anyone else in the like who is working with you. So like you should be ready to listen and collaborate with them, like as and when needed. So yeah.
Great.
So there's one more question, which is, what would you say to motivate women to build a career in supply chain? I think I can answer that by saying that young women should start thinking differently. Yes, historically, this was not a career choice, but with times changing, uh, I would like to encourage a lot of young women listening in to join the career. It's very interesting. The field has a lot to offer, and why not?
Get in and perform well on a lighter note.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's actually fun, to add on to that. I mean, I think the things that we do is fun because it's needed everywhere and everyone needs, and we are the ones who make the one-click delivery happen. So it's a lot of, it's a proud job too.
Okay, with this, we arrive at the conclusion of today's session on women's leadership in supply chain. I would like to extend my gratitude to each of you, Alpana, Monica, and Shimon, for taking time from your busy schedules and enlightening us with your experiences and views. I also thank each and everyone from our audience who participated today, sent in their questions, shared their opinions to make this event a success. But before we end the session, please don't forget to fill in our feedback form provided in the comments. We would love to hear from you your suggestions for our future events. We will be having more such discussions as part of Food Supply Chain Leadership Forum. So please follow our LinkedIn page to stay updated. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us, and thank you for this insightful conversation.
Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Thank you. Thanks everybody. Thanks. Bye.